And again, you've hopefully found on your calculator the square root button. You remember that a square root, hopefully you found the square root button on your own calculator. It's good if you have a calculator that has a square root button because we're going to use it, right? The square root button on here is this little symbol, right? Square root of 25. What's the square root of 25? It's 5, right? The square root of a number is the number that multiplies by itself to give you that number. Your calculator might be newer than these ones. This one's a bit newer, and it writes it in a kind of a better way, the way you write it on paper. So this one, if I use the square root button here, it's going to write like square root of 25. That's how you write it. You write the line over top of the number. Here it writes it with brackets and the funny symbol at the beginning. However, it writes it on your calculator as long as you know what it does, right? If I do the square root of 36, what's it going to tell me? 6. What if I was to do, I don't know why that stupid thing keeps showing up there. Let's get rid of it. What if I was to do the square root of a number like 30? And I really wish that thing wouldn't stay there. Square root of 30, think about what your guess might be. Obviously, I know you can put it in and push the button, but we should be able to estimate square roots based on some of the ones we know, right? What would your estimate be for that? Is it going to be a whole number? Yeah, why is it not going to be a whole number? Well, square root of 25 is 5. That's a whole number. And square root of 36 is a whole number 6. Those are both called perfect squares because they have whole number square roots. This one is not going to have a whole number square root. Because is there a whole number that multiplies by itself to give you 30? No. You can do 5 times 6, but you can't, there's no whole number that multiplies by itself. It's going to be a decimal number. Anybody have a guess? You should know what it's going to start with. It's going to be what point something. It's got to be 5 point something. You got to know that it's 5 point something because since 30 is between 25 and 36, its square root has to be between 5 and 6. Any guesses as to what it might be? 5.4, 5.5, 5.6. I know you can put it on your calculator to tell me the exact thing. That's not what we're looking at here, right? We want to be able to estimate what they are. What do you think? Don't tell me an estimate if you've already checked it on your calculator. What do you think it is? 5.4? 5.2? 5.3? It's a bit closer to 25 than 36, but it's just about in the middle, so I'm going to guess 5.5. It doesn't matter if I'm right or not. I just have to be able to make an argument for why it's about 5.5. Okay, it's 5.5 roughly, right? 5.47, like it rounds off. If you had to round it to one decimal, it's 5.5, but it's going to be a number that goes on forever. It's a decimal that doesn't repeat, doesn't stop. But it's important to understand the logic that we just used. If we want to know what square root of 30 is, so if somebody says, estimate square root of 30, let's call this example 1 so it sounds really formal here. Estimate, and if you happen to be copying things down, which I think is a good idea, estimate square root of 30. If you want to estimate what that value is, here's your solution. Your solution is this, okay? Here's your thinking process, right? The problem is here's you thinking. You got a huge big cloud of what you're thinking. What you're thinking is 30 is between 36 and 25. Why did I pick those two numbers to say what it's between? So square root of 30 has to be between what two numbers? You've seen the symbol before. What does that symbol mean? I don't want to call that greater than or less than. What I want to call it is the thing on this side is bigger than the thing on this side. That's what that symbol means, right? The thing on the side with the open end is bigger than the thing on the side with the pointy end, right? This end is bigger than this end. Does that make sense? I know you call it greater than and less than, but I'd like you to be able to read them backwards. If I write this, if I read it this way from left to right, what does it say? A is less than B. Sometimes in math we want to be able to read it backwards. What would it say if I read it that way? B is greater than A. Don't memorize that this symbol means less than, because it depends which way you're reading it. What this statement is here, this is kind of crazy because I got two of them. What I'm saying is 30 is greater than 25, but it's less than 36. Does that make sense, that statement there? If I write something like A and I put a symbol like this and I put a symbol like this, what is that saying? It's saying A is, well, actually, let's put some numbers there instead. Let's say if I put A is that and this is 15 here. What am I saying about that? I'm saying A is bigger than 15, or sorry, bigger than 10, but less than 15. You can write it with words if you want. What does this tell me about this square root here? What has it got to be between? It's got to be between 5 and 6, doesn't it? Doesn't it have to be between 5 and 6? You can write that with words if you want, if you don't like symbols. You can say square root of 30 must be between 5 and 6, since 30 is between what two numbers? What two perfect squares? 25 and 36. You think of a perfect square on either side of the number, and that's how you're going to start to estimate. Okay, if you like number lines, you can think of it on a number line, right? You can say, if I want to know what square root of 30 is, right? If I want to know what that is, what I can do is I can say, I know for sure it's between 6, which is square root of 36, and 5, which is square root of 25. It's got to be between those two numbers. And so you might estimate that it's 5.4, 5.5. It's not wrong if you put 5.4, 5.3, or 5.5, or 5.6. What we're looking for, like if I was to ask you this to explain, to show me you know how to estimate square roots, because I think some of you estimate it this way. You say, let me get my calculator out, and let me check what it is. Square root of 30, I would say it's about 5.5. That's not what I mean by estimating. I want you to be able to estimate without your calculator. It's about 5.5, halfway between, since it's halfway in between those two things. How could we estimate, let's call this example 2. How could we estimate square root of 104? Square root of 104. What do you think? Square root of 104, without our calculator, how could we estimate what this is? What do we need to think about here? What do you think? You know what 100 is, right? We know. We also know how to spell no. We know square root of 100 is how much? 10. And what's one that's bigger than 104? Square root of... If you want to know what square root of 104 is, you think 104 is between two numbers I know. You got to know your perfect squares, and 100 is one of them, right? What's another one bigger than that you know? Well, what's one that's bigger than 104? Well, 10 squared is 100. What would 11 squared be? 121, right? So it's got to be between there somewhere. So if we want to know what this is, we're going to think it's somewhere between 10 and 11. But you could look and say 104 is kind of closer to here, right? This is closer to here. If you have a number line, like if you imagine it on a number line here, you got, whoops, it's kind of goofy. There's 10, there's 11. If I want to put what this thing is here, if I want to know where this is, it's closer to this, so I'm going to put it over here somewhere, right? It's actually going to be kind of closer to this, right? It's probably even going to be even closer like that. What is that going to be? What do you think? What would be a good guess here? All of that logic that I just explained, that's what I need to hear from you if I ask you this on a test or something. I don't actually care what you write here. I need to hear the logic. What would be a good guess? It's got to be 10 point something. What would you think the something would be? 0.2 would be a good guess. 0.1 would be okay. 0.9 would not be a good guess. Why not? Why not? That's way too close to this, right? But if you either put a picture like this, or you explain it with words like this, or you write something like this, any of those things are fine as long as you explain it somehow. The problem is that, you can go and check it on a calculator, but some people think what they mean by estimating is that all they would show for this is when it says estimate square root of 1 of 4, they would just go to their calculator and say it's whatever their calculator tells them. That's not what we're looking for. We need to know that you can do it without the calculator and you can explain it. Okay? That's what this is all about. If you look at that section, the picture that they use I think is good because they show you two floor mats here. They have one that has an area of 36. Whoa, that's not good. What would be the side length for this? For that green mat that has a 36? That's a little. This guy is obviously a giant because he's standing there. And what would be the side length for this mat right here? What would be the side length? 6. This would be 6 meters, which means how tall is that guy? Would you estimate? What would be his height? If that green mat is 6 meters, how big is 6 meters? Like, compared to this room, how far in this room is 6 meters? Here's 1 meter. So how tall do you think that guy is? Way past if he's at least as long as that mat is across there, right? So he's a 6 meter tall guy. He's a giant here, right? Anyways, despite the inaccuracy of the picture, if that green mat was 6 meters along the side, and the purple mat is how long along the side? How long? 7 meters along the side. What would you estimate the other one is? It's got to be somewhere between 6 and 7, right? How many square meters do you think that mat is? I don't know. Does it look like it's closer to the purple one or the green one, or halfway in between? Kind of halfway in between. So maybe it's like 42 or something like that. 43. And its side length is going to be between there. This is a section you can get done in a hurry. You have lots of time to do this. The first thing to do is an explore that hits some of these. Now, why do you think I would ask you to do this explore the math when we just had a nice discussion about this?
See if we were paying attention.
Well, because my job is to get you to learn this, right? So some people are very good at learning by listening. That's good. Is that right? So we have one opportunity to learn by listening. But what were some people in this room doing while I was having this riveting discussion about square roots? Just kind of staring into space or whatever. It's not because you're bad people. It's because you're human beings. Some people are good at listening and learning that way. Some people are not so good. I'm not going to mention any names, right? Because I think I'm actually not good at listening. If I was put in a room and said, you must listen to this thing that you maybe aren't interested in learning right now, I might not learn it that way. I'm more of a learn by doing. I would learn better by actually doing the activity and figuring it out for myself. I'm giving you multiple options of ways to learn. So if you learned it like this, you'll whip right through that explore. If you were just staring at the ceiling, it'll take you longer. But you'll learn it if you go through and do the activity. Some people are going to learn by reading in the textbook, right? By reading the example and trying the example, or trying it first and then checking. 3 different opportunities to learn. What if you don't take any of those opportunities? So what if you weren't listening, and you don't do the explore, and you don't read the examples and try the textbook stuff? What's going to happen? You're probably not going to learn it, and you're not going to do so well. Some of you are going to learn lots of ways. You're going to have listened to this and learned something, and then you're going to do the explore, and you're going to learn other things, and then you're going to read the examples and do them, and you're going to really learn it really well because you've hit it a bunch of different ways. I can't force you to learn I can just put the opportunities in front of you. Just like if you have a little 4-month-old baby and you want them to eat some food, you can't force them to eat, can you? You can't force someone to eat. Because you can put the mashed peas in their mouth or whatever, but what can they do? They can just keep spitting it out, right? You can keep trying. So I can put all these opportunities in front of you, but you have to do your part, right? The baby's not going to eat it until they swallow it. You're not going to learn this until you do your part. Okay? You got half an hour to get most of this section done. I really think we can do it, unless we just sit there. Okay?